Imagine this, Roman soldiers, screaming, drowning. Their ships, burning, splintering against the unforgiving Mediterranean. This wasn't a storm. This was Carthage. Centuries before European superpowers dominated the seas, a North African empire forged the first professional navy in history. And with it, they almost extinguished the rising flame of Rome, forever changing the course of Western civilization. For centuries, the narrative has been incomplete. History, as they say, is written by the victors. But what happens when the victor is too afraid to tell the whole truth? We often celebrate the Roman Empire, its legions, its laws, its enduring influence. But that empire, that behemoth, almost never was. Its very existence hung by a thread, threatened by a power from across the sea, a power born on the shores of Africa. Before Rome commanded the waves, before their galleys ruled the Mediterranean, there was Carthage. A Phoenician colony, yes, but one that grew into a force unlike any other. A commercial hub, a melting pot of cultures, and, crucially, the architect of the first professional navy in history. Forget the hastily assembled fleets of other city-states. Carthage invested, innovated, and industrialized naval warfare. They built ships that were faster, more maneuverable, and packed with devastating firepower. We are talking about quinqueremes, massive warships powered by hundreds of oarsmen, each a meticulously trained fighting machine. Their secret: money. Carthage understood that naval dominance required dedicated sailors, paid soldiers, and continuous investment. This wasn't just about trade or coastal defense. This was about projecting power, about controlling the very arteries of the Mediterranean. And control it they did, for centuries. They challenged the Greek city-states, dominated the Iberian coast, and amassed a wealth that dwarfed even nascent Rome. And that wealth, that power, brought them into direct and sustained conflict with the rising power on the Italian peninsula. The Punic Wars. 3 brutal, generation-spanning conflicts that would define the fate of the Western world. The First Punic War, beginning in 264 BC, saw Rome scrambling to build a navy just to survive, copying Carthaginian designs with desperate haste. The Second Punic War is well known. Hannibal, a name that still strikes fear into the heart of military strategists, his audacious crossing of the Alps with elephants, his crushing victories at Cannae in 216 BC. But what is less often acknowledged is the source of his strength, that Carthaginian navy, protecting his supply lines, ferrying reinforcements, and ensuring that Rome could never truly contain him. For decades, Rome teetered. One wrong move, one decisive naval defeat, and Carthage could have landed a force large enough to march on Rome itself. The Latin language, Roman law, the very foundation of Western civilization, all could have been extinguished. But here's the part they don't tell you so loudly. The naval battles that Rome did win, the battles that ultimately turned the tide, they were often won not through superior seamanship, but through sheer brutality, through ramming, boarding, and turning naval warfare into a land battle at sea. Desperate measures from a power on the brink. Hold that thought. Because here's the revelation. What if I told you that the ships that Rome used to defeat Carthage were built Carthaginian shipwrights? Recruited after earlier defeats, offered wealth and safety, to turn against their own nation. Here's chapter 2, why it matters now. We've talked about Carthage, a titan of the ancient world. But to believe the narrative that Africa's story is one only of victimhood, of extraction and exploitation, is to fundamentally misunderstand the continent's power, its agency, its sheer economic might across millennia. Think about this, the Mali Empire, flourishing in the 13th and 14th centuries, a beacon of learning and trade, a land of unimaginable wealth. We are taught to marvel at Europe's growth during this period, but rarely do we hear the true scale of Mali's dominance. In 1300 AD, the Mali Empire's GDP was larger than England's and France's combined. Let that sink in. This wasn't simply about raw materials being shipped elsewhere. Mali controlled the trade routes, dictated the terms, and built an astonishingly sophisticated society. Timbuktu, under Musa, became a global center for scholarship, attracting intellectuals from across the Muslim world and beyond. The echoes of this economic prowess resonate even today. The skills, the ingenuity, the entrepreneurial spirit that fueled these empires haven't vanished. They are woven into the very fabric of African innovation, of the continent's relentless drive to shape its own future. But it's not just about economic might. It's about challenging the narrative, about reclaiming a history that too often has been distorted or ignored. Because when you understand that Africa wasn't just surviving, but thriving, building empires, funding global trade, then you understand that the ancestor of Musa, Sundiata Keita, established the empire in 1235 AD to end brutal King Sumangro Kanti's reign. That means that Africa didn't just produce resources, it actively shaped the world we know today. Carthage's naval mastery wasn't just about ships, it was about vision. A vision of African innovation that shook the world. Today, that legacy lives on. It's proof that Africa's greatness isn't confined to the past, it's a blueprint for the future. Want to unlock your own potential? Explore your guide to building generational success. Just $27 at pornoafric.com/shop.html. The story of Carthage reminds us, when Africa leads, the world follows. Share this knowledge. Tag someone who needs to hear the African story. Globe showing Europe Africa together, we rise. **